Chapter 2368. What is seen is fate. 1. Your prophetic abilities are indeed powerful, but Zhang Yi also told me your weakness. That is, detachment from cause and effect. Gao Changkong stared at Di Shitian and coldly stated the truth. After more than 100 simulated battles, as his strength increased, he finally found a way to defeat Indra. As his superpower index rose to 36,000 points, the cycle of the meditation mudra became increasingly close to reality, until one can distort the cause and effect of others. The collision between the cycle of reincarnation and the Seven Treasures Golden Rank's abilities, a battle of foresight and counter-foresight, caused the battle scenes that the Seven Treasures Golden Rank could predict to become uncontrollable. This also shows that Gao Changkong's combat power has completely surpassed that of Di Shitian. Gao Changkong raised the Sun Will Holy Sword in his hand, staring at the last level of Di Shitian's Seven Treasures Golden Steps. This is the last time. If I kill you this time, you'll really be dead. Indra's heart was pounding wildly. The possibility of death was drawing ever closer. 6 simulations, all failed. No matter what he did, Gao Changkong was able to deal with his attacks and drive him into a corner. Indra, be a thing of the past. I, Gao Changkong, accept everything about the kingdom of Bharata. Gao Changkong unleashed a sword strike from afar, and the Sun Will Sword erupted with dazzling golden light, transforming into a surging torrent of alien energy that completely engulfed the space in front of Di Shitian. Even so, Indra remained unmoved. His eyes gleamed with a strange and wonderful light. He didn't dodge. He even abandoned his defense altogether. Gao Changkong sensed something was off. Did he foresee his own death? No, I saw destiny. Indra clasped his hands together, offering no resistance, as if he were about to sacrifice himself for his cause. Garuda, have you forgotten? I am Anand Sharma. I was a prophet before the world entered the Ice Age. Gao Changkong frowned, wondering how this guy planned to resolve this inevitable endgame. The next moment, the cage that was prepared specifically for Indra shattered with a loud crash. An intense, impenetrable darkness permeated the surroundings, obscuring everything, even the sky. A figure slowly emerged from the hazy black mist. He was clad in black armor, wore a crown, and had a pair of dark red eyes that shone with a menacing light. And what shattered the private paradise was the enormous two-handed sword in his hand. Sensing the incredibly powerful aura emanating from the other party, Gao Changkong's expression suddenly changed. Another mental polluter, the dark apostle of the demon god Samuel, has appeared. Indra stood quietly in place and calmly said to him, I told you, I will not die. Because I am destiny. Anand Sharma, a genius prophet, born with the supernatural power of Bharata to foresee the future. His predictions about the future were vague and distant, but they were never wrong. Zhang Yi's time hand can see 5 seconds into the future, but he can see 5 years, or even 50 years. In the predetermined future, he did not die today. So even when swords and knives were at his doorstep, he was completely unafraid. I'm going to find chaos. This is the right path for me. Without the constraints of a private paradise, Indra raised the world-honored one's heavenly net umbrella and swiftly departed, stepping onto the 7 jeweled golden steps. As the 7 treasures' golden steps dimmed layer by layer, Gao Changkong knew that he had found the best escape route by using his ability on the Shadow Swordsman. But now, how is he going to escape? Gao Changkong stared at the Shadow Swordsman, who slowly turned his neck and stared back at him. Just 1 step away. Gao Changkong sighed. However, at least we can make this guy an enemy of Zhang Yi, so it's not all for nothing. The claim that he was controlled by Yang Xinxin and became Zhang Yi's puppet to attack Di Shitian was also part of his plan. If they fail, they can easily shift all the blame onto Zhang Yi. By creating a conflict between Di Shitian and Zhang Yi, he could reap the benefits regardless of who died. However, he truly regretted not being able to kill Indra during such a good opportunity. Deep within the dark sun forest, a small, circular clearing has been formed by a rare sight, a twisted mass of dead trees. The air here seems a little cleaner than elsewhere. At least the maddening whispers are fainter here. Fungu leaned against the trunk of a giant tree that was mostly petrified, and several new cracks appeared on his signature charred bone armor. Even he would encounter many dangers if he entered this area full of mentally corrupt lunatics. But here they were safest, because he knew that all the people of the two great empires across the entire moon were frantically searching for them. Get out, they're all finished. He carefully checked his surroundings, and only after confirming that it was temporarily safe did he turn his attention to the girl sitting quietly beside him. Liexing wore an unusually clean white silver moon dress, which was out of place with the surrounding dirty environment. Her eyes, though clear, stared blankly into the void, her long eyelashes occasionally trembling slightly. Give. Fungu took a small, sealed box from his inner pocket. Inside were several nutrient pills that emitted a faint glow. His voice was deep, yet surprisingly gentle. The girl tilted her head slightly, accurately looking in the direction of the sound. She reached out and accurately took the pill, her movements so fluid that she didn't seem like a blind person. Thanks. Her voice was very soft, like the wind blowing through a wind chime. As Fungu watched her take the pill, his gaze softened for a moment beneath his charred mask. He swallowed one himself, then continued to warily scan the surrounding deadwood forest. How much longer do we have to walk? Liexing asked softly. We're almost there. Burning Bone's voice was steady. Find the Night Witch, and she can heal your eyes. Then we'll be safe. He said this many times, but each time he said it, the firmness in his tone never diminished. Liexing remained silent for a moment, her slender fingers unconsciously stroking the hem of her skirt. Burning Bones, she suddenly asked, what will happen to the people outside if we just leave like this? Won't our departure cause them trouble? Her question startled Fungu slightly. He turned to look at the girl's overly pure face, her lifeless eyes seemingly able to see through people's hearts. You are not responsible for anyone. Burning Bones' voice grew even lower. In this world, being able to live well is the greatest meaning. He paused for a moment, then added, besides, the outside world is no longer what we know. Staying or leaving won't change the outcome. Chapter 2369 The Fate of Those Who See It. Upon hearing Fungu's words, Liexing lowered his head slightly, his pale fingers tightening a little. But I can feel it, she said, her voice softening, that so many people are suffering. Sometimes I can hear them crying, even from so far away. She knew her mission from a very young age. Everyone around her loved her very much and gave her almost everything she wanted. She absorbed a large amount of precious energy, and although she was not taught any combat skills, she possessed a power that even the Silver Moon Guardians admired. In her short 50 years of life, she was surrounded by happiness and freedom. Even if her favorite sister, Ciel Union, told her that sooner or later she would become a spark and sacrifice herself for the supreme beings on the Silver Moon throne, she could accept it all calmly. It was that encounter with Burning Bones that changed everything. She was not afraid of death. But a tiny bit of selfishness, during the blossoming of young love, led her to take his hand when he arrived on that day, escaping that glamorous cage. Burning Bone remained silent for a moment. He knew that Instant Meteor was telling the truth. Her special sensory abilities could always detect things that ordinary people could not. Everyone has their own life and the meaning of their existence, he said, and the purpose of my existence is simply to let you live happily and freely. That's all. He stood up, and the bone armor made a slight grinding sound. We've rested enough. It's time for us to move on. The sooner we find the Night Witch, the sooner we can get rid of these invisible eyes. The blindness of the meteor was not congenital, but rather the work of the Radiant Moon Empire. Because it possesses a healthy body and immense power, the fire has a very high chance of becoming uncontrollable. Therefore, this is not a simple physical illness, and conventional treatments are unlikely to restore its sight. Liexing obediently stood up and gently grasped the edge of the bone armor that Fungu handed over. Her movements were very practiced, indicating that she had already followed him for quite a distance. Just as they were about to leave, Fingoose suddenly turned around and shielded Shun Liuxing behind him. His charred bone armor instantly glowed with a dark red light, like a volcano about to erupt. Something is approaching from the shadows of the deadwood forest. Have the people of the Empire come after us, undaunted by death? Burning Bones placed his hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist, his voice turning cold. Stay behind me and don't move an inch. Shun Liuxing nodded gently, his pale face showing no fear, only complete trust. She couldn't see the impending danger, but she could feel the taut muscles beneath the burning bone armor and the sudden increase in murderous intent in the air. The Dark Sun Forest never gives people a long chance to catch their breath, and their journey is still very long. The deeper you go into the Dark Sun Forest, the thinner the light becomes. The fog was so thick that even during daylight hours on the far side of the moon, sunlight could hardly penetrate it. Zhang Yi and his team need to rely on the night vision devices in their combat suits. The trees here, or rather, the peculiar black creatures that have been nourished by the corpses of the Lunarians, are becoming increasingly bizarre in form. Some branches were twisted into postures that resembled human cries of pain, and a dark red, viscous liquid seeped from the cracks in the bark, emitting a sweet, rotten smell. Zhang Yi, Yang Xinxin, and Brian walked among them, their footsteps making an unsettling rustling sound on the thick, soft sand covered with decaying leaves and unknown debris. The taste of this godforsaken place is like a milfy, each layer more disgusting than the last. Brian muttered to himself. It was a mutated white Labrador retriever. Its fur was still relatively clean, but its nose was wet from constant twitching. Its superpowers granted it an extraordinary sense of smell and language, making it the team's most reliable guide at this moment. Chaos, death, and that inexplicable madness, like spoiled cheese. It suddenly stopped, sniffed carefully with its nose close to the ground, lowered its tail warily, and then swung it rapidly like a small electric fan. Woof woof woof. Wait, there's a familiar smell. It's faint, masked by these ghostly smells, but it's definitely it. Yang Xinxin stood quietly to the side, her combat dress motionless in the almost stagnant air. Her gaze fell on the spot where Brian had been smelling, her deep obsidian eyes seemingly able to see through the layers of decaying plant remains. What is it? Zhang Yi asked, his voice sounding slightly lower than usual. The further he went, the more he felt an invisible pressure, like a damp, cold spider web wrapping around his mind. It's the aura left behind by that shadow warrior named Burning Bones, and by that blind girl. It smelled the clothes on the two people, so it was able to find them by following their scent. Brian looked up, his dog-like face displaying anthropomorphic seriousness. Bone burn and meteor shower. Their scents point deeper. Not much time has passed, maybe 3 to 5 days, at most no more than a week. Keep up. Zhang Yi's gaze sharpened slightly, and he spoke concisely. Finding the burning bones might yield more clues about the Night Witch, or the heart of the forest. Moreover, they will inevitably have to fight another big battle then. Finding burning bones and meteor shower, and bringing meteor shower back, means the end of her life. But so what? He was willing to do anything to prevent the moon from cracking and Earth's surface from being impacted and entering a true apocalypse, even if it meant wiping out the entire Lunarian race. The two men and the dog continued on their way, relying on Brian's nose to navigate through the intricate woodland. With its head lowered, it sniffed hard with its large black nose. The gas collected from the scent sensor would enter its combat suit for identification. The surrounding silence grew heavier and heavier. Even the sound of the wind disappeared, leaving only the sound of their own footsteps and breathing to be heard clearly. Zhang Yi felt a throbbing sensation in his temples, and tiny, flickering blacks began to appear at the edge of his vision. Brother Zhang Yi, Yang Xinxin suddenly spoke, her eyes filled with deep concern, but not nervousness. Are you all right? Zhang Yi frowned. He felt that his emotions were somewhat chaotic and irritable, as if the surface of his brain was covered by a sticky, murky substance. It's spiritual pollution, he said in a deep voice. It's more insidious than what we've encountered before, like water dripping on a stone. He tried to build a barrier using dimensional portals to prevent himself from being spiritually corrupted. But the pollution was pervasive, not a direct attack, but a subtle distortion of his perception. This thing isn't a physical attack, but a mental one. It's almost superhuman. All-encompassing nature makes it difficult to defend against. Chapter 2370. What is seen is fate 3. The pollution of one's spirit and will is pervasive. Zhang Yi was all too familiar with this feeling. I had a similar feeling back in the sealed land of Mammon. But clearly, Samel, the sin of wrath, possesses a mental corrupting power that is far more disgusting than the sleeping Mammon. Gradually, the scene before Zhang Yi's eyes began to change. Sometimes normal, sometimes distorted, turning into all sorts of bizarre shapes. Zhang Yi rubbed his combat suit mask, a gesture that seemed rather self-deceptive. I feel a bit like I'm Karsak right now. The twisted trees seemed to come alive, their branches swaying slowly like tentacles, and the liquid seeping from the ground was no longer dark red, but thick black sludge, bubbling and gurgling. Most strangely, Zhang Yi saw that his hands, and even his whole body, began to be surrounded by a cold, black flame. The flame had no heat, yet it made him feel a burning pain and hunger from the depths of his soul. The illusion suddenly intensified. He found himself no longer in a forest, but standing on a boundless wasteland. The sky was an eternal blood-red twilight, the earth was cracked, and not a blade of grass grew. But when he opened his eyes again, the sky suddenly turned blue with white clouds, and he was standing on a lush mountain range, with tender green grass everywhere. The wind blew over him, making the scene a little noisy today. The feeling of this illusion is so real. Zhang Yi couldn't help but make a couple of sarcastic remarks. Just as he was trying to memorize Wang Shouren's The Philosophy of Mind and calm his mind to regain his senses, a human figure appeared on the vast plain. A handsome young man dressed in a simple linen robe was sitting leisurely on a rock, holding a shepherd's staff in his hand. The boy's face was so perfect it seemed unreal, with a gentle smile on his lips, but his eyes were deep black vortexes that seemed capable of devouring all light. He had a blade of grass in his mouth as he herded a flock of sheep grazing in the fields. His appearance gave Zhang Yi a feeling of being in another world. It's so similar, so incredibly similar. More than half a year ago, he had a similar feeling. That one was Li Changgong, who transformed into him and accompanied him on an adventure in a fantasy kingdom. That person know that being his title is the sin of greed, Mammon. Welcome, welcome. The boy spoke, his voice clear and melodious, like a mountain stream, yet carrying an ancient echo that resonated directly in Zhang Yi's spiritual world. He looked up at Zhang Yi with a gentle, harmless smile. Zhang Yi watched him warily, his spatial energy gathering, ready to be unleashed. Although the other party showed no sign of attacking, Zhang Yi instinctively prepared himself for battle. Samel. He called out the name. This was not a question, but a confirmation. Only Drucker, the giant known for his rage and symbolizing primal desires, could exude such pure spiritual pollution. The boy, the embodiment of Samel, smiled slightly and did not deny it. He gently tapped a clump of green grass on the ground with his shepherd's staff. A white sheep nibbled off a few blades of grass and chewed them heartily. Did you see that? The grass absorbs nutrients and water from the soil and grows tenaciously. Then the sheep graze, which allows them to survive and reproduce. Finally, his gaze fell on Zhang Yi, his black, swirling eyes seeming to see right through him. Humans eat sheep to gain strength and prolong life. So, the boy tilted his head, his smile unchanged. Can a person just eat grass? Or eat the soil? Zhang Yi frowned, staring at Samel's avatar, carefully considering the question the other party had asked. Either he's just bored and playing a prank on me, or there's some special meaning behind it. But thinking about it, ancient beings that have lived for billions of years shouldn't be so bored. This question seems simple, but it points directly to a cruel rule. The conversion and transfer of energy involves levels and efficiencies. Directly absorbing the lowest level of energy sources is often inefficient or even harmful to higher life forms. Look, Samuel's voice carried a hint of seduction. Sheep eat grass, humans eat sheep. This is the law of nature, the ladder of evolution. Devouring is the most primal and powerful force in the universe. Why resist it? Isn't the instinct to devour also flowing within you? The black flames surrounding Zhang Yi burned even more intensely in the illusion. He felt a strong urge to devour everything in front of him, the land, the withered grass, and even the handsome shepherd boy. This instinct stemmed from the primal power of the mad owl he absorbed, from the shared origin of the Druk god race's power, and was now being amplified infinitely by Samuel. Devour, evolve. Zhang Yi's thoughts began to become chaotic, and the black flames seemed to be burning away his last shred of reason. He felt himself sliding into an endless abyss, where only the most primal hunger and satisfaction existed. Just as his consciousness was about to be completely swallowed by darkness. A cold, clear voice, like an absolute rule, resounded directly from the depths of his soul, severing all chaos. Rule determination. The level of external mental pollution is too high, triggering the underlying defense protocol. Execute the purification procedure. It's Yang Xinxin's voice. No, it's more like some kind of antivirus software that she had pre-programmed and imprinted in his consciousness was activated. The Hersher's arrow that had been prematurely inserted into Zhang Yi's body was activated. In an instant, Zhang Yi saw countless fine, precise blue lights, like circuit boards, illuminating the inside of his body, which was burning with black flames. These rays of light spread rapidly, and wherever they passed, the black flames were extinguished and dissipated as if they had encountered their nemesis. The alluring image of the shepherd boy began to distort and blur, emitting a silent roar, and finally collapsed completely, like a shattered mirror. The illusion faded. Zhang Yi suddenly opened his eyes, a look of confusion in them, but it vanished in an instant. Before he knew it, cold sweat had soaked his back. He remained standing in the dark forest, with Yang Xinxin beside him, while Brian stood guard vigilantly in front, his dog-like eyes watching him nervously. Dude, what were you spacing out for? I'd have thought you secretly rewarded yourself and entered a state of sagehood. The stinky dog grinned cheekily. We're good bros, I understand. How about we duo Q next time? Zhang Yi glared at him fiercely. I still prefer the fully automatic mode. I don't like manual. You know, I don't even drink hand-drip coffee. You were just trapped in a deep mental illusion. Yang Xinxin calmly stated, my preset cognitive anchoring rule took effect. When your consciousness is severely polluted, it will forcibly reset your perception and return you to the baseline of reality. Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.